Adam Peters has been cooking for the Washington Commanders, and we have the top 5 reasons why the Washington Commanders have won free agency so far. Let's go. Greetings and salutations, and welcome to Ref the District. I'm Nathan Perry. That's the Stoner here with your top 5 reasons why the Washington Commanders have won the opening of free agency thus far. We're going to include all sorts of transactions. We're going to include some of the things players have said, and we're going to include some of the things that, hey, they're no longer here. All those are going to be talked about on this list, and we encourage you to make sure that you head over to the comment section. Let us know why you think Washington Commanders have won free agency opening period or the start of the league year. Let us know in the comments. Make sure you hit that like button as well. Of course, share this content with your friends so you can join them on Wednesdays live at 7:30 Eastern when we stream live right here on YouTube and also Facebook. Of course, if you like winning, you're going to head over to Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for betting on all things madness. Whether you're a seasoned fan or first-time better, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion with the largest selection of odds on everything from college basketball to a $200,000 bracket contest. BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every Cinderella story to every hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. Of course, we encourage you to bet responsibly with your money, hard-earned money here on Ref the District. And I know Stoner is going to be responsible with his takes here. Maybe not so much on this side of the thing, but Stoner is the level-headed one of the two of us. But I did want to start off. Is this what winning feels like to you? Do you feel like Washington has done good in the opening salvo of the league year? You know, you've got the contracts that were signed previous to the legal tampering period. You got the legal tampering period, and then you got Wednesday opening of free agency and all of the signings here after. Do you feel like Washington has won?
How can you not feel like they've won? Because they absolutely killed it in this part of the offseason. I love everything that this team has done. Spoiler alert, I'm just going to say it right off the beginning, is I love everything that they've done. And they've still got work to do, obviously. Mm-hmm. They got the draft coming up, and you still got holes to fill. But what they've done, and we're going to go over the biggest reasons that they've won free agency, what they've done should make every Washington Commanders fan feel good that this was not a one-year wonder, that this was not just some sort of luck of the draw that happened last offseason. So absolutely, Nathan, I'm really looking forward to see how all of these moves turn out.
Yeah, I think it's important when you're looking at this, like Washington is a flawed team, but that flawed team made it to the NFC Championship game, and the goal is to continue getting there, if not going further. And so Adam Peters has to kind of work his magic to recreate the magic of last year. Now, how did he go about it? Well, the first thing actually I want to talk to you about is the contracts. Smart money makes money. I really love what Adam Peters is doing with the contracts. You saw it last year as well. A lot of one-year deals, a lot of 2-year deals, 3-year deals, not a lot of long-term contracts that he's trying to put out here. Largely, he knows and understands in a couple of years, he's got a big contract that he has to pay, and he's got to make sure that the money is available for when that legendary contract is going to come down. Of course, I'm talking about the extension for Jaden Daniels, which will probably be record-setting by that point for the young Super Bowl winning quarterback, from my mouth to your ears there on that one. But these contracts, I really, really love what he's doing here. So the only contract right now that I believe that has been signed for more than 1 year, or more than 2 years rather, is John Bates for 3 years. Everybody else is being signed for 1 or 2 years. Noah Brown on a 1-year contract, Jonathan Jones on a 1-year, Dietrich Wise is a 1-year, Marcus Mariota 1 year, Will Harris, that's a 2-year one. He's one that we're going to keep an eye out for as well. sorry, Kinlaw is another one. I apologize.
That was a 3-year.
5 million. I think that one is probably the only one that I think people would disagree with me when it comes to the contracts, and they're a little confused why you would pay him $45 million. And then Jonathan Allen walks and he gets $60 million for 3 years. And it kind of makes sense when it comes to the contracts for defensive tackles and where they're going. But I really love what Adam Peters is building and how he's going about it with these shorter contracts.
And I think what you put under there, Nathan, where you say smart money makes money, it has been a really smart offseason. The moves that they made, these contracts are super smart, because I really think that they had an idea when they went into this offseason, and they didn't just sort of have this board of guys that they wanted. They had a board of guys that they wanted and what they were willing to pay, and they were not going to go past that. So let's just say, for example, there's a lot of rumors out there that they wanted Ronnie Stanley, rumors that they wanted Javon Holland, rumors that they wanted who was the corner? DJ Reed, right? Guys like that. But
rumors that they still want Hendrickson.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you can't meet their financial threshold, then they're not going to overpay. They're just not willing to do that with these guys. They just had a set amount that they were going to pay, because look, Nathan, when they went into the offseason, they had 25 guys under contract out of 53. That's it. And I don't care that they had the third most amount of money to spend. You got to spend it on 20 plus dudes. You can't be throwing around these massive contracts all over the place and overpay. So I think they were really smart. And the rumors I'm hearing also, Nathan, not rumors, but these are facts, is that Adam Peters, the agents for these players, have really loved what Adam Peters is telling them. He is not trying to lowball them. He's not trying to trick these agents into negotiating them down to a lower number. And he's just saying, this is what I'm going to pay for DJ Reed. I can't go above it. I'm not going to try and pull one over on you. I'm not going to be underhanded and all that and slimy. This is what I can pay him. If he gets more somewhere else, he's going to go somewhere else. But I can't. I want DJ Reed on my team, but I can't pay more than this. And he hasn't done that with any of these guys. Maybe, like you said, the Kinlaw deal in some people's eyes are a little higher, but then that goes to what they're trying to do specifically on defense. They're not trying to do what they did last year.
It shouldn't be, because that was a bad defense.
Exactly. So they're changing it up. We need space eaters. We need guys that are going to take up 1 and 2 of the offensive linemen, so that our DBs and that our linebackers and our safeties can come up and make those plays. And so they're designing it completely different than it was. Don't keep running it back if it didn't work. Change how you're going to do it and change it with different guys.
I'm going to ignore the perfect segue to the next one and continue on with this contract discussion here and talking about those players who did walk away from Washington. You're not paying De'Ami Brown, who flashed towards the end of the season, $10 million, the way that Jacksonville is. Probably the biggest one that people were surprised Washington didn't pay was Jeremy Chin, leaving for the West Coast as well and taking a 2-year, $16 million contract. You mentioned Will Harris. He cost half of what Jeremy Chin did. Do you feel Will Harris is at least half of what Jeremy Chin provided?
Well, I mean, if he is, then you've got obviously a great bargain in putting this team together. And I think it just goes to show you that they have a specific plan in place. This is not fantasy football that you and I play and that everybody watching is playing, and you've got all this money and it doesn't matter. You just throw it around and then fill in the gaps with low price guys. They have a specific plan. They have analytics. They have smart people in that building who have decided that Jeremy Chin is worth this much money. Jeremy Chin, we're going to give you this much money if you want to come back. Jeremy Chin says, I can get more over here. Love you, Jeremy Chin. You were awesome. You were a professional. You helped with this defense in cutting down on those big pass plays. You were great. We can't afford what you can get somewhere else. And so we're going to go with Will Harris. And he comes at, like you said, half the price. and hopefully you can get at least close to the same production.
I don't know that you'll get the same production. I think that what I love is that it opens up the defense on flexibility. So Will Harris, maybe not the tackling machine that Jeremy Chin was. You're going to see a couple big pops if you go look at some Will Harris tape, but he offers flexibility and letting Quan Martin not have to always cover the top. Quan Martin now can come down and play in the box as well as Will Harris. So you have some flexibility, something that Chin and coverage didn't provide. And so to me, again, smart money here, putting half the money into Will Harris to get some flexibility for defense and also changing things up there, and then not paying a wide receiver that only just recently broke out for you. Did good. Thanks, Diami, for some good memories there in the playoffs. But have fun down in Jacksonville. Yeah, except for that. Have fun down in Jacksonville. Talking about players, those are players are gone. Let's talk about the players who came back, and as Stoner put there earlier, running it back. Now, the defense wasn't exactly exciting, but Washington did run it back with a few people on the offensive side of the ball. Your favorite non-tackle and John Bates coming back on a 3-year deal, but also bringing the likes of Zach Ertz and Bobby Wagner back. What do you make for those signings? Because it seemed like pretty much all the big names. I know one name in particular did not come back that you wanted, which was Cornelius Lucas. But for the most part, I feel like Adam Peters pleased you on the players that he returned from free agency.
Yeah, and again, they're not all the big names. Like you said, the Zach Ertz and the Bobby Wagners, those are big names, obviously. But the guys that they brought back that are so important to the overall success of the team, the guys like Nick Bellore, he's an absolute monster on special teams. So you need Nick Bellore on your team.
2-year deal for him,
Yeah, you need Tress Way. You need Michael Dieter. He's a backup center, and you just ask him to come in and hold the line a little bit while Biadasz gets healthy, if that happens. All of these guys that they're bringing back are super important for the small role that they play in the overall success of the team. But it's the right people, Nathan, that they bring back. That is bigger and more important than the names that you necessarily want to bring back. And you did John Allen was a release for salary cap reasons, whatever. You let him go, and Diami and Jeremy Chin, like you said. But they brought back most of the guys. Dante Fowler was a guy also that they didn't bring back. But they brought back a whole lot of the guys from last year. And they're the right
coming back as one that we really like there. Now to pair with Jonathan Jones as well, where now you kind of got better on your 1 through 4 and defensive backs because he let Benjamin St. Juste walk. So there's a lot here, and the reminder to this is what we talked about at the beginning, Stoner, is this is a team that was 1 game away from the Super Bowl.
Sure.
And so there are parts where you need to return, to be able to do that. And I feel like the parts that came back will help Washington continue be successful in the next season.
Yeah. Really looking forward to having the guys continue doing what they did last year and providing the leadership, the culture building, all of that into next year.
Now, part of the building is just within free agency. It's about making some smart trades. And one of the ones that hit the market this time was Deebo Samuel. And it's coming in number 3 here is the reason why Washington won this opening portion of free agency in the league year here. Deebo Samuel really providing an explosive playmaker for this offense, where Washington already had kind of a high level offense and very efficient offense. Deebo Samuel offers them a little bit more retooling, the yards after catch, some physicality when it comes to running the ball, and flexibility, being both a running back and a wide receiver. Maybe not going to take off the top end of defenses anymore, but the fact that he can move around and do different things for the offense is going to be very exciting, and it alleviates some of the pressure from having Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin carry the load like they did last season. Really, it was those two and a bunch of role players through the rest. Deebo Samuel has the opportunity to be more than a role player and push this offense even further. You're a big Deebo Samuel fan. So what did you think trading a 5th-round pick for a former Pro Bowl wide receiver?
That's all you have to say. They traded him for a 5th-round pick. They traded him for Hampton, the 5th-round pick from last, Dominique Hampton, a guy who didn't see any action on defense at all. That's the likes of what you gave up to get him. Now he comes with a hefty price tag, and I would say average. I mean, he's not Jamar Chase, but Jamar Chase got $40 million a year.
Yeah.
And Deebo's coming in at $17.5 million for this year. And he's on a contract year. That means he's hungry. He's right at that age where this is it. This is his football life coming up this season on what's going to happen the rest of his career. If he has a very good year, he's going to get a nice contract, his last big contract in the NFL. So he's got motivation. He's playing with the best quarterback he's ever played with in Jaden Daniels this year. He's playing with a team that needs him to provide that type of offense that you talked about. And as the number 2 receiver, whatever you want to call him, number 2, number 3, whatever it is, he's better than anything Washington had this past year or anything else on their roster in wide receiver after Terry McLaurin. Noah Brown, Diami from last year, Crowder, OZ,
yeah.
all these guys. He's better than all of these guys, and he improves your offense big time. Just his presence alone being on the field, you have to account for him. You didn't have to count for Noah. You didn't have to account for Luke McCaffrey. As he showed, he was open all the time, but Jaden's not going to him, right? So it's a big move to bring him in on a contract year and only giving up a 5th round for him. That's a massive move for this organization.
You bring up the wide receiver contract. Of course, today, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins reportedly signing huge contracts, bringing both of them into the top 10 most paid wide receivers. Now, we're going to get to Terry McLaurin's contract on Wednesday. So make sure you join us Wednesday live, as that's going to be a topic of conversation. But when it comes to Deebo Samuel, people I have seen scoff at the cost. He's coming in at less than $20 million, which is almost $10 million less than Jalen Waddle, who's number 10 on this wide receiver most paid list at $28.25 million a year. I don't think he's going to get Waddle level numbers, but I do feel like he is going to be the second most productive playmaker for Washington outside of Jaden Daniels, right? So you're going to have Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel being the top 2 playmakers for this offense. Great. That's not to take away from what we'll get on the running game. Maybe we have some additional help to include the 4 running backs they have currently on the roster, but I feel like you're going to see a little bit more coming from both Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel this year, and they're going to be well worth the money this time. Will they be getting bigger paychecks? Well, that's going to be a conversation for later. But this year, you're getting an explosive playmaker at a great rate. Now, one of the things that Deebo Samuel himself mentioned was this was going to be a special year, and something that has been a thread through all of the signings is talking about the culture here and how it feels different. Now, Stoner, this is something every free agent talks about when they move to a new team, right? They're like, well, this feels different. This is someplace I wanted to be because the culture feels good. But this time it does feel different for Washington. And I think our fan base, that we don't, the way that they're going about this and they're discussing it, the free agents who are coming in and the players who are coming in, I believe them more than I did in years past. What do you think about the culture here in Washington?
And you also have guys who are coming back from last year who were not here in previous years. And again, we're talking about the Wagners, Bobby Wagners and Zach Ertz and
Marcus Mariota.
Mariota is a big one. Cleveland Farrell, guys like this who have said it is different. It just is. And these guys have been around for a while. They've been in a lot of locker rooms. They've been around a lot of head coaches, and it is different. I know, like you said, a lot of people want to say, everybody says that when they get to a new place. But these are returning guys as well who are saying, I want to go back to that. Zach Ertz wants to go back because he had the most fun he's ever had, and he's been playing for 15 years. and this was the most fun he ever had. And he wants to play next to John Bates, who's the best blocking tight end he's ever seen. And Bobby Wagner wants to come back to this because he loves playing here and he loves the leadership and the staff and all that. Those are guys who have experienced it everywhere, and they also experienced it here. So it's just not lip service. And the guys who are coming in for the first time are saying things like, you can't fake some of this stuff. Will Harris says you can't fake the sort of things that they're saying around here. You either have it or you don't, and this organization has it. It won't bring everybody back. It's not going to bring Dayami back, right? If somebody gives them more money.
Yeah,
it's
sure. Money still talks. Yeah.
Money will still talk, but if it's close, then Bobby Wagner's coming back. And Bobby Wagner could have gone back to his old coach and Pete Carroll. He could have gone back to Seattle. He could have done all these things, but he says that this is where I want to be because he loved it so much. Culture is a big part of sports, especially in football when you have such big locker rooms. And it matters what leadership does within those locker rooms in terms of wins or losses. It just does. Culture is a big thing. A lot of people don't like that word. They think it's kind of like a word that they don't want to use because it sounds weird, but culture is very important to a winning organization.
I think it matters because, like I said, money is first and foremost going to be the biggest factor when it comes to, I would say, 98% of players, right? That's the focus, is getting the paycheck, because that's fair. That's a fair thing. But what's nice is, in years past, I don't feel like Washington was in contention, even if they threw money at the problem, because it wasn't a place where people wanted to come and play football. Now, the Washington tax, as it were, right? They no longer have a complete black cloud where they are having to overpay players to come here. You're going to start seeing a lot more quality players come on a contract where it was equal or comparative to another team's contract. And DJ Reed talked a little bit about that, where it was just like, it was down to Washington and this other team. And we don't hear that normally. We don't hear it's down to Washington. Washington's normally not a factor unless they overpay for talent. And I feel like Washington, in one season under Dan Quinn and Adam Peters and with Jaden Daniels, have become a team where players want to come and play, because it does look like it's a lot of fun, and that you have a culture that is about building players up, and you have a team that's a winning team, or at least you feel has that potential to win football games. And it feels great that Washington is in that spot right now.
And it's not a be-all, end-all. It doesn't necessarily translate directly into wins and losses and winning a Super Bowl and all that, right? It's an important factor in doing so, but the number one thing is always going to be talent, right? You got to have the talent. And when you have the talent that they have at quarterback right now, that helps big time. That will help turn the tide when guys are comparing contracts and finding that they're pretty close. Well, do I want to play with Jaden Daniels, or do I want to play with, I'm just throwing a guy under the bus here, but Sam Darnold, for example? I'm going to go play with Jaden Daniels because I know the kind of player he is and how much higher he can still go with his play. So that's part of it as well. It's not necessarily going to lead to wins and losses, Nathan, but it's a huge factor in how this team can get to where they're trying to go, the ultimate prize.
Now, the ultimate prize so far in this free agent period and this opening salvo, as I have talked about it, is bar none Laremy Tunsil coming to solidify the left tackle position, the position you feel is the second most important on the field because it protects the most important. And while we differ on where we feel the second most important position is, we do not differ in how much we love this trade. Now, there's a lot of numbers and there's a lot of moving around when it comes to the draft picks. When it comes to this, what it amounts to is, according to John Keim, a second round pick next year is what it amounts to. Of course, you're literally trading a second round pick next year for this player, but this is one of the best left tackles in the game right now at 30 years of age, who that means you probably have at least another good 4, maybe 5 years of play as long as he stays healthy. And you're telling me I'm trading a second-round pick for this? Is this real life? I mean, normally you don't see players of this caliber, a former, not just Pro Bowl, but an All-Pro, come available for a second-round pick.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Nathan, if they don't make this move, we're having a completely different conversation about the offseason. This is a massive move for Washington. Left tackles don't come cheap. So whatever you paid for him is probably going to end up being a really good deal for you. You need that left tackle. You improve left tackle. You probably improve wherever Coleman's going to go off of left tackle. You've improved your left guard because of your left tackle. So you've improved 60% of your offensive line just by bringing in this one guy. He has warts. Everybody has warts. Everybody has risks involved. If you want to look at penalties, if you want to look at any sort of statistic, PFF, whatever, he's not perfect. But he's a top 5 NFL left tackle, and those are really hard to find. And now Washington has one. And now you can continue to build all those other pieces. You can build into those wide receiver 2. You can build into an edge rusher. You can build in a cornerback 1. And they've done most of that already. So putting this guy into your offseason moves is what makes the Commanders win free agency. I'm not saying they had the best free agency. And again, we know this was a trade, but it was the free agency period. I'm not saying they had the best free agency out of everybody, but for Washington and what they needed to do, this was pretty close to an A as you can get for them. It may not translate to a better season or better wins, but they put themselves in position to have a better season and more wins and go farther.
Well, let's talk about some of these warts here because I feel like they're a little bit overblown. The first one you mentioned there was the penalties when it comes to Tunsil. When you actually look at the stats, when you're actually looking at how many penalties, because people like to point out he led the NFL in penalties last year. He got called on 19, 17 of those stuck. One of them was offsetting and another one was not accepted. Now, 12 of those 17 were false starts. The whole combination of all of these amounted to 95 yards. So not really a whole lot on the yardage front. But that's 17, 19 if you want to include those other two. By the way, the offsetting one was a unsportsmanlike conduct against the Dallas Cowboys. So I was going to forgive him of that one anyways. But right. It was offsetting, so it doesn't count. 17 penalties, Stoner, in 1,200 snaps.
Yeah. 1,400 snaps?
Maybe 1,400 snaps?
Whatever it was is a lot.
Whatever it is, more than 1,000, which means even if it was just a straight 1,000, 17 out of 1,000 snaps, you're telling me that's when he messes up? But it's those other snaps, you're getting a Pro Bowl left tackle. Yeah. You can watch the games that Houston played, and Laremy Tunsil is holding his guys on an island, and the other 4 guys were awful. Now, that might play into the fact that you're saying 60% of the line gets better, but the fact that you don't have to worry about that one guy, you can leave him. You no longer have to have John Bates or Zach Ertz or Jeremy McNichols or Eckler have to chip the guy on the left anymore. Mm-hmm. That is fantastic. That is absolutely fantastic. So the penalty thing, I think, is overblown. Houston fans remember it, and they feel really bad about that. They had 2 seasons where he had that kind of level of penalties out of the 5, I think, that he played in Houston. So, but the thing is also out of those 17 penalties, 19 total penalties, almost 2/3 of them happened in the first 4 games last year.
Yeah.
Meaning that the other 2/3 of the season, games week 5 on, he only had, I think it was 7 penalties.
Yeah.
That's less than a penalty a game. You're not like, it's really overblown. He had one really egregious game against Minnesota where he got 6 flags. But
6 false starts in one game.
Yeah, it wasn't all false starts. There's a couple others in there, but
okay,
6 flags in one game. Yeah, just like that sticks with you. But then you look back at it and you're like, wait a minute, the rest of the season he wasn't really being called at all. So I definitely think the flag thing is overblown.
And also think about this when most of those calls, like you said, are false starts. They're little 5-yarders. I think the average of his 17 penalties was 5.5 yards lost, because out of the 17, it was 95 total yards, right? So an average of just over 5 yards per penalty. In years past, with a different quarterback, maybe you got a problem with that. But you've got a quarterback now where they're going for it on 4th down all the time anyway, because of what they have at quarterback. You can overcome those 5-yard penalties. What you can't overcome is your quarterback getting killed, or these 10-yard holding penalties.
Yeah, only 2 holding penalties.
At 2 in 18 games. I think you can live with that. And then when you look at the PFF numbers and all those other numbers, they're off the charts in terms of what he can do at left tackle. So a great
pre-snap penalties too, because there was it wasn't just the false starts, but there was a couple of like formation ones. So the pre-snap penalties, the false starts, at least you're not losing it down, where the holding is like maybe it takes back a big play type deal. The false start, if it calls the play dead and you just move it back 5 yards.
Yeah.
And so I think that's very important as well. Again, I think the penalty thing is overblown.
We'll pull our hair out a few times when he does it.
Yeah, sure. The first false start that he has that it's on a 4th and 1 or something like that. We're going to lose our dang on minds. I got you. I'm willing to eat my words then, but I don't think it's going to be a problem, especially when you see how many single-digit penalty years that he's had over the course of his career. One of the other things that I feel, because I said these guys, they're not normally made available. So Houston is getting rid of a all-pro level left tackle. Why would they do that, especially for a 2nd-round pick? I don't know what Ryans is doing, the head coach over there, and Houston's doing. I mean, he jettisoned the offensive coordinator. He got rid of 2/3 of the offensive line to include Tunsil. They're trying to reset over there as they have a young QB that they believe in. And it looked really bad for them at the end of the season, where CJ Stroud was not able to get able to throw the ball because he immediately had people in his lap. So, I mean, that's part of it. But also, when you're looking at what Ryans wants out of his players and everything, he's expecting, these players to be leaders. Now, I'm not saying Washington doesn't expect that of certain players, but Laremy Tunsil, through the beat reporters, they talk about how he's a football player and he loves the football life, but he doesn't do the whole leading thing. He's not a captain. He's not going to sit there and coach up other players. He is going to go out there. He's going to play to the best of his ability, and he's going to knock some defensive players on their butts. That's what he's going to do. And I don't think Washington needs him to be a captain. They have the leadership out in spades. So it's not something that I think is expected of him here, where it was expected of him in in Houston. And from all reports, he's not a locker room cancer. It's not like he's a bad guy. He's well liked. He's just not. He's not a leader. He's a lunch pail guy. He's going to come in, do his job, and head out the door.
That's the thing, is he's not toxic in the locker room. He's not the opposite of a leader either. He's just a guy who fits in with everybody else. Like you said, Nathan, you've got the leadership structure in place in that locker room already. You don't need another one. Would it be great if he was? Sure. But it's not something that this locker room necessarily needs. They just need, as you said, the left tackle to come in and knock some guys on their butts and make sure Jaden Daniels doesn't get killed, allows him to do what Jaden Daniels does best and lead this team to victories. It's just not something that they needed here. It would be great, but not necessary in this locker room.
Yeah. Washington doesn't plan on picking high in the draft, which is where you're going to get stud left tackles. So I think Laremy Tunsil is going to be just fine here. Of course, the draft is going to be coming up around the corner. We're going to have more draft coverage coming for you, but this was just kind of the opening start of the league year and how Washington fits in. Stoner, real quick, what would you give them a grade? You kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, but just hit me with a solid grade here.
My idea of every time I think about it, all I can think about is the draft and how they only have 5 picks right now, and that sort of kind of spoils everything that happened in free agency because they still have holes. Let's not forget that they still have some holes that need to be filled. So I can't give it an A plus. I can't even give it quite an A. But if all they did was trade for Laremy Tunsil, I'd give this an A, because that's a huge part of what this team needed. And they did it for relatively inexpensively. So I'll go A minus, and the pessimistic side of me would say a B plus. And that's pretty darn good. And that's why I think they won free agency, is they made some necessary moves. And they didn't break the bank. They didn't give out big contracts. They brought in the right guys. I love everything that they did. So A minus, B plus at worst.
Yeah, about the only way I think that they could get an A plus is if they were to actually fill all the holes, which of course was going to be impossible. There's one hole that remains for me that I want to see filled. Not so much that I'm going to stretch in the draft for it, but I do hope that they end up with a solid edge rusher post the draft, right? Maybe, with the post June 1 cuts, maybe as we get some cut downs. They did good with players in situational times, but that's the only thing I'm seeing here missing. That's a glaring hole, because I feel like the cornerback room with Jonathan Jones has gotten so much more improved, having him be one of your outside corners, moving Mikey back in, playing Will Harris, being able to move him and Quad Martin around is going to help that side of the defense. Your linebackers were good. Your defensive line was what needed help. Maybe Kinlaw is the answer to be a run stuffer, but now you need an outside attack to really help that defense out, which will then in turn help the offense. So for that reason, because that's the biggest thing, and in my opinion, pass rusher is the number 2 position in football for me. Most important position in football. That's why I'm going to give it a B plus. I love the Tunsil thing. I like the players they brought in. I like the players that they did not bring in. Okay. They had options when it came to certain players. And while maybe they didn't get the guy you wanted, maybe you can agree with us on the high grade. Of course, put that in the comment section for us. Let us know where you're at while you're hitting that like button and sharing this content with your friends. Don't forget to come out on Wednesday live at 7:30 Eastern, where we talk things all Washington Commanders here on Ref the District. I'm Nathan Perry. That's the Stoner. We're brought to you by Bet Online. And until next time,
A minus, B plus for you and I. Those are fantastic grades.
Be a fan.